Good morning, everyone. Today is Monday, the 11th of January 2016. My name is Chris Ellis, and I'm here to bring you a full node update. So yes, as you know, I've been building Bitcoin full nodes for some time. This is what they look like. This is how they turn up. And today I'm going to show you an unboxing of a full node to show you what you can expect. This is in response to Merlin's Matrix, who had a question about how to set up his Bitcoin full node that he had received. Looks like he had some success already because he had it loaded up. Looks like he's got it loaded up there, but I wanted to show you some more advanced features like how to edit the config file in Bitcoin. And so this week has been my first week back, or I should say last week was my first week back, and some people had mentioned that some of their full nodes were crashing after maybe 2 or 3 days, and a few of you got together and actually self-organized and worked out how you could tweak the parameters to make your nodes stay up for longer. I can actually reveal that I have not been able to replicate that error. I will show you right now. The full node in the other room that I have live is right here, and this has been running now for 8 days. You can see at the top there, this has been running for 8 days, and you can see how much CPU time that Bitcoin D has been using up. So it's been running that entire time unabated. So that's pretty good uptime. I was kind of hoping that it would go down at some point, but luckily for us, we did have some inputs from some other experts in the community, one of whom was MZ, and MZ got to us and told us a way. Let's just see, let's bring up his post here. He gave us a script that we could run. And this script here, it's just coming up on your screen now, is what you can use, a little bash script that you can put in the user local bin folder, which will run, and he's set it here. The parameters are set to every 15 seconds do sleep 15. Means every 15 seconds it will check to see if Bitcoin is running, and if it's not running, it will restart Bitcoin D. And so you don't have to manually reset the router. Or I should say the full node, not the router. So here is a full node box. This isn't exactly the same box that you will necessarily receive, because sometimes we get them from different suppliers, because I often drain the supply. So this one is an example of a box from RS Supplies, and that's that kind of box. And this is the traditional box, which many of you would already have received. What do you get in the box? Let's have a look. So you get a USB adapter, sorry, an SD card adapter. You don't necessarily need this. The SD card will be plugged into, the micro SD card will be plugged into the Pi as default. So let's open up the box. And that's the full node right there. And it's got a little fan on it, 5-volt fan. You also get a chunky USB, micro USB cable, like this one. You can use ordinary USB cables for like phone chargers and things. However, I do recommend that you use the one that I send you, and that's because it's a very thick, chunky cable. Bitcoin full nodes need girthy cables. They need girth. They need good current going into the full node, because you've got a lot of peripherals you're going to have plugged in, including the 128 gigabyte SanDisk Cruiser USB stick. And you're going to have probably keyboards and things like that plugged in, and that's going to draw a lot of power. When you draw a lot of power from the Pi, it has to be economical, and what might happen is that there is less current available for the memory stick, and if there's not enough current left for the memory stick, you can sometimes get corruption, data corruption on the memory stick, because it ends up being unmounted forcibly. So let's see. So this is basically what you get. This is the contents. You get the USB memory stick, you get the Pi, you get the SD card adapter, and you get the USB cable. You will need to provide for yourself the actual local plug adapter, and that's really for logistical reasons. I was finding it difficult to source all the different countries' power adapters. And also I figured that they were pretty ubiquitous anyway, that most people have them. They come with a lot of phones, so they have been coming with phones now for about 8 years or so, and so most people have one of these knocking around. So you will need one of these. Now if all you want to do is run the Bitcoin full node headlessly, that means that you just want to plug it in and just let it go and let it be serving blocks over the blockchain, and you want to be able to be enforcing the consensus mechanism across the network, and that's all you want, then you can simply plug this device into the wall. You will also need one of these, which is an Ethernet cable plugged into your router. Either that, or you can purchase for not very many dollars a small dongle, a Wi-Fi dongle that can plug into the router as well, but that will require some degree of setup. So let's demonstrate now plugging in the actual Pi. I'm just going to mount the camera onto a tripod. Okay. Okay, so show you the setup that I've got here. I've got my shot of the ceiling. Let's get the tripod ready. Okay, so I've got my charger here. Now what I usually prefer to do when I set this up is I've also got a keyboard and a mouse. Again, you will need to supply your own keyboard mouse setup. You don't necessarily need the screwdriver unless you're going to unplug the device. And just see. Usually the USB cable will come wrapped up. You're going to want to plug the cable into the charger like so, plug it into the wall. Now before you plug the actual power cable, if you intend to plug this in directly into a monitor, you're going to need, the first thing I usually do is I plug the monitor in first, and that's because if you don't plug the monitor in first and you power up the Pi, often you can't get the monitor to power up at all. The monitor needs to be the first thing that it needs to see before it powers up. I'm going to plug in an Ethernet cable here, and I'm going to plug in the USB memory stick. And I'm going to plug in the keyboard and the mouse. I'm going to get the power adapter. And just bring the camera like so you can see how this is all looking, all set up. And then I'm going to plug it in. And then what you will notice is, if you have a screen plugged in, it will start running through the setup process. Even if you don't have a screen plugged in, that's okay. It will still just do this silently, so you don't even have to plug in the monitor and the keyboard and the peripherals. It will just go through this automatically. Okay, and then it's all set up for you, and then it will just start running in the background. Now, let me just show you what the terminal looks like. You might also be able to hear the fan. I'm just going to set up a new tab. Okay. So in order to SSH into the device, in order to be able to connect to it via the command line, you're going to need to open up Terminal on a Mac. Also, there is Terminal on Unix, and on Windows you have PuTTY. I'm not a Windows user, but I'm presuming it's the same process. So you want to do the command SSH, followed by the username of the device, which is pi, at fullnode.local. You do not have to know the IP address of the device in order to get it to connect. You then put in the password, which is as standard Raspberry. I've kept that the same as the way it comes whenever you buy a Raspberry Pi for the first time. So I've tried to change as little as possible. And then you can simply do Bitcoin. And then, well, actually what you can do is type in bit, then you can hit tab, and that will auto-complete. You can then hit -C, tab again, and that will auto-complete to CLI, or command line interface. And then you can type in the command get info. And there you have it. And so you can see that we are now connected to 19 peers. And that's because, as standard, if you see that's just saying 8, actually what you'll see initially is because we waited a little bit of time, what you'll see initially is it's saying error loading blocks, and then it will say error activating best chain. That may take some time. It can sometimes take several minutes. Sometimes it can take like up to an hour. I try to deliver you the devices so that they don't take a very long time to set up, but sometimes the initial setup can take some time. But usually I will go to great lengths to make sure that your initial setup time is as little as possible by doing it here before it leaves the factory. So if you see that the connections are only set to 8, that's because you probably haven't set up port forwarding on your router. Not all of you will need to do this. I have set up what's called the UPnP, the Universal Plug and Play settings, as default, and I have set the listen parameter to 1 in the latest version. So some of you may not need to do it, but some internet providers, you will need to consult your router's manual, and you'll need to go into the port forwarding section. It's usually under advanced settings in your router. So it'll be something like in the browser, you'll go 192.168.0.1, and you will need to go into advanced settings, then port forwarding, and then you can normally establish a new port forwarding setting. Just call it something like Bitcoin. You will need to put in the IP address of the device that you're using. If you're using IPv4, the normal standard IP addresses, and you will then need to put up port forwarding for 8333, and you can just go ahead and do that. And then what you'll notice is that your node, even without restarting the node, you don't need to restart anything, will then start to have more connections on it, just like that. Now, if we do the command change directory and we start typing in .bit and then hit tab, it auto completes to Bitcoin. And we can then go into that folder and we can do ls-la. We can see all of the files in that folder. And you want to look for the file bitcoin.conf. So we want to do nano bitcoin.conf, and I'm hitting the tab key whilst I'm doing this. That auto completes. Okay, and you can see here you've got all of the settings in here. UPnP equals 1, listen equals 1, the daemon is 0 because of a script I'm about to show you in a minute. And so this will be up on the GitHub fullnode.protip.is. There will be a file that you can download. You can actually download a copy of this, and also all the Tor settings are here for you in case. So these hashes here that begin each line, they are what's called comments. So if you remove the hash, that will activate that parameter there, only net equals Tor, and then the onion setting. When you put the hash back, the software is told, the Bitcoin software is told to ignore that line. So anything with a hash in front of you, you can see here you've got some instructions. Anything with hashes, if the line starts with a hash, it will ignore that line. If it doesn't start with a hash, that means it's an active parameter, and it will actually execute that as a command. Another thing to note is that you will need to change the RPC password. It won't come like this. This is a node that I've set up for myself, so I have given it somewhat random, and I'll need to change this after this live stream. But this will come as standard as either Raspberry or Change Me. I'm going to start putting Change Me on them now. And you will need to change that because I have activated the server by default when you get them, which means that in theory, if somebody knows your external IP, they could get access to your Pi. So that is important that you change that. So you can then just hit Control X. It will ask you if you want to destroy changes. I'm just going to say no for now, but if you hit Y, that will then exit and make the changes. Nano, for those of you who don't know, is a text editor in the command line. So I also wanted to show you the script that MZ had given us and explain exactly what it does. So let's just go over to here. So what he's saying is, because some of the users have reported that their full nodes were going down after a few days, of sending us screen grabs of a top, which is where it shows you all of the top processes being used by your full node. What they were noticing is after like 2 or 3 days, Bitcoin was chewing up, you can see here, 92% memory. I hadn't seen this in testing. I'm not entirely sure yet why that's happening to some people and not others. It may just be because of network conditions. For that specific user, they just happen to have connected to a peer that is relaying a lot of transactions. But thanks to the community, remember that I don't own this. A lot of people, anyone can have a voice in this space. Guess what happened? You know, some people came along, like my very own, that's Steve Douglas, and he said, look, you know, I've put these parameters into my Bitcoin comp file. Allowing maximum connections of 24, using a minimum relay TXV of 1 millibit or smaller. I think actually that might be smaller than that. That's actually a microbit. And so you'll only be processing transactions with fees that are larger than the standard amount, and you'll ignore all the others. So what I've now done is I've updated the nano file in order to reflect this. So I can actually show you now what these different things look like, what these different text files look like. Let's go back down to MZ's post here. Okay, so we're going to go now into the user local bin. Bin stands for binary, and we're going to look at this Bitcoin D restarter.sh. Let me just get that window back up. Okay. So what we're going to do is do sudo, because we need to be a super user, nano user, and that's going to auto-complete. Local, and then binary, and then we're going to type in bits, and then it was dash, what did we call it again? We called it restarter. Okay, so we don't actually have it yet, so we're going to create it. So if the file doesn't automatically exist, doesn't already exist on the machine, then typing in nano will simply create that text file. So we're now into an empty text document. I can go over to the Git repo, and I can simply copy and paste what MZ has given us. And so basically it's going to wait for 15 seconds if Bitcoin D isn't running, and if it detects it's not running, it's going to restart Bitcoin D. That's what that script essentially does. I'm going to hit X, go yes, hit return, and that has now saved the file in there. So we go to user, local bin, So that CD stands for change directory, and then I'm going to get ls. And you can see Bitcoin restarter.sh. Now, it looks like we've got two here because I probably, oh yeah, because I've actually called them something different. That's why I already actually put it in, but I wanted to show you actually creating it. Another thing that you need to do is you need to change the permissions with something called chmod. So chmod plus X, oops, and then you can put in the directory. Usually we put in the whole directory. Now I've named this particular one Bitcoin, not with the B, so change that. Oh, you need to do SUD. There we go, and then go ls, and you'll notice it's now in bold because it's executable. And then the other thing that we need to do, according to MZ's instructions, is that we need to edit the RC local file. So that's in the etc folder. So we're going to do sudo nano etc rc.local, and these are just text files, right? These are just ordinary text files as you would normally have. So I can now comment out this old one by putting a hash in front of it, and putting a hash in front of it means that the computer will just ignore it. And then what I can do is I can put in my new script just here, just paste that in. Let's remove the D because remember I only called it Bitcoin -restarter in this particular case. And then I can hit Control X, hit Y on the keyboard, and exit just like that. So really all you're doing is, you're not doing any kind of really like hardcore computer science here. You're really just doing basic text editing. It looks a little bit more complicated because you're in a command line and it's not point and click. But it takes a little bit of getting used to, but then after a while, once you get used to it, it becomes a lot easier. So I'm just going to now log in to the user interface on the other Pi. I'm going to type in Pi. Let's type in, let me just see if I can get this pointing here. Raspberry. So you can type in the command start X, like so. And then that will put you in, if you do have a keyboard, mouse, and a screen that you can plug this into, you might need an adapter like this one, or you might need a VGA adapter if it's a slightly older computer. And then that will put you into a more familiar environment if you're not used to using command line. It will give you a desktop like this. You can open up a terminal window up here. Just let me just show you that. So that's LX terminal up there. And you can, let's just see if it might be the Bitcoin. No, okay, so it's not actually running on this particular one. So what I might do is try starting Bitcoin QT, see if that runs. Yeah, okay. So you can also start up Bitcoin QT as well, which is just the normal. Let me just see if I can change the color settings. There we go. And it'll just say loading wallet like that. And it might take you a while to load up the blockchain. So yeah, that's just a quick demonstration to show you how you can edit some of the config files. I'll do more of these videos. I just got up nice and early this morning for an interview and then realized I was 24 hours too early. So I thought I'd make the most of my time. I'm going to start today by making the notes, so I may be on back a little bit later. So that'll be all for me for now. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll speak to you next time. Bye-bye.